Do-hyun Kim pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship. The Galactic Educational Institute grew larger as they approached. The massive space station looked like a crystal flower floating in the darkness of space. Hundreds of ships from different worlds moved around it like busy bees. His stomach felt tight with worry. He was the first human student ever accepted to this famous school. Students from across the galaxy came here to study the most advanced science and diplomacy. Most humans had never even left their home solar system. The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Do-hyun picked up his single bag and walked toward the exit. His hands were sweating. The other passengers were all aliens. Some looked like walking trees with silver bark. Others had blue skin and moved like flowing water. A few looked like giant insects with colorful wings. None of them looked at him. To them, he was probably just another strange alien. The station's corridors were huge. The ceiling was so high that Do-hyun could not see the top. Hundreds of different beings walked, floated, and crawled through the halls. The air smelled like flowers mixed with metal and something he could not name. Do-hyun followed the signs to the student dormitories. His room number was 847C. He took a floating platform that moved like an elevator but in all directions. The platform stopped at level 847, and he stepped off. The dormitory hall was quieter than the main corridors. Do-hyun found his room and pressed his hand on the door scanner. The door slid open with a soft hiss. 3 alien beings looked up at him from inside the room. The room was much larger than he expected, with 4 beds that looked like they could change shape for different body types. "You must be the human," said a voice that sounded like music played through water. The speaker was made of what looked like blue crystal. Light patterns moved under his skin like captured lightning. "I am Vex. I am from the Veltharian homeworlds." The second being was huge, almost touching the ceiling even while sitting. He had 4 arms and skin that looked like gray stone. When he smiled, Do-hyun could see teeth like white boulders. "Grox," he said in a voice like distant thunder. "Bruthan warrior clan. But I study peace now, not war." The third alien was small, about the size of a human child. He had purple skin and 8 thin arms that moved like tentacles. His head was much larger than his body, and his eyes were bright yellow. "Kip of the Zephyrian Science Collective," he said in a high, quick voice. "I have read much about humans. You are from the Death World, yes?" Do-hyun set his bag on the 4th bed. "Death World? I guess Earth can be dangerous. I am Do-hyun Kim. Nice to meet you all." Vex's light patterns changed to warm colors. "We are excited to learn about human culture, especially your combat sports." "Combat sports?" Do-hyun asked. Grox nodded, making the floor shake slightly. "We have seen your entertainment broadcasts. Humans fighting in arenas, boxing, wrestling, mixed. Martial arts, very impressive for such a small species." Kip's tentacle arms waved with excitement. "Yes, and your team combat sports. Football where armored warriors crash into each other. Hockey where they fight on ice with sticks. Basketball where giants battle in the air." Do-hyun sat on his bed, which automatically adjusted to his body shape. "Those are just games. We play them for fun." "Games?" Vex's lights flickered with confusion. "But they look like training for war." "Some humans do take sports very seriously," Do-hyun admitted, "but most of us just play them to stay healthy and have fun with friends." Grox leaned forward. "What sports did you play on Earth?" Do-hyun thought about his childhood. "I did not play team sports much. I spent most of my time camping and hiking with my family." "Camping?" Kip asked. "Living outside for fun? In tents? Cooking food over fires? That sort of thing." The 3 aliens looked at each other. Vex's lights pulsed in what Do-hyun was learning meant confusion. "You lived outside for fun?" Grox asked. "Like, without buildings? Without climate control?" Kip added. "Without safety systems?" Vex finished. Do-hyun nodded. Sure, it is relaxing. Good for clearing your mind. Before anyone could respond, a voice filled the room. All first-year students report to gymnasium. 7 for physical education orientation. The 4 roommates left their room together. The corridors were full of students heading in the same direction. Do-hyun noticed that most alien species stayed in groups with their own kind. His roommates were unusual for mixing together. Gymnasium 7 was enormous. The floor could have held several football fields. Students filled the space, creating a rainbow of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some floated above the ground. Others were so large they made Grox look small. A tall, elegant being walked to the center of the gym. His skin was silver, and he moved like a dancer. When he spoke, his voice carried easily across the huge space. "I am Professor Thane," he announced. "I will be your physical education instructor. In this class, you will learn to push your bodies beyond their limits. You will compete, struggle, and grow stronger." Professor Thane's silver eyes swept across the crowd. "This semester, each species will demonstrate their traditional physical activities. This will help us understand each other better. The Veltharians will show us their light dancing competitions. The Bruthans will demonstrate strength contests. The Zephyrians will race through aerial courses." Do-hyun felt his stomach drop as Professor Thane continued. "And our human student will show us the combat sports that made his species famous across the galaxy." Every eye in the gymnasium turned to look at Do-hyun. He felt his face grow hot. Hundreds of alien beings stared at him with curiosity, fear, and excitement. Vex whispered, "You will show us human gladiator combat," Grox added quietly. "I have heard humans can fight for hours without stopping." Kip's voice was full of scientific interest. "Will you demonstrate how humans can ignore pain and injury?" Professor Thane smiled. "Each demonstration will be at the end of the semester. You have 8 weeks to prepare. Use this time to train hard and plan well." As the students began to leave the gymnasium, Do-hyun stayed behind. He was not a fighter. He had never been in a real fight in his life. He had no idea how to demonstrate human combat sports to a gymnasium full of aliens who thought humans were natural warriors. His roommates waited for him by the exit. "Do not worry," Grox said, putting one massive hand on Do-hyun's shoulder. "We will help you prepare." Vex's lights glowed warmly. "Yes, we are roommates. We help each other." Kip nodded rapidly. "I can research the most effective human combat techniques." Do-hyun managed a weak smile. "Thanks, guys. I just need some time to think about what to show everyone." As they walked back to their room, Do-hyun's mind was already working. The aliens expected him to demonstrate human combat sports. But maybe he could show them something more important, something that would teach them what humans were really good at, something that would surprise everyone, including Professor Thane. The next few weeks passed quickly at the Galactic Educational Institute. Do-hyun attended classes on alien biology, interstellar politics, and advanced mathematics. His favorite class was xenopsychology, where he learned how different species thought and felt. But every day, students asked him about his upcoming demonstration. Word had spread that the human would show everyone real combat sports. Some aliens seemed excited. Others looked worried when they saw him in the halls. Do-hyun's roommates spent their free time preparing their own demonstrations. Vex practiced with other Veltharian students in a special room with crystal walls. Their light patterns danced, together in complex ways that looked like living art. Do-hyun watched through the window and felt amazed by their beauty. Grox trained with massive stone blocks in the gymnasium. He could lift weights that would crush a small building. Other Bruthan students competed to see who could throw the heaviest objects the farthest. Their contests shook the entire station. Kip worked with his fellow Zephyrians to build flying courses that twisted through the air like impossible mazes. They moved through these courses so fast that Do-hyun could barely follow them with his eyes. Their movements looked like purple lightning. Meanwhile, Do-hyun made strange trips around the station. He visited the emergency supplies department and asked about food rations. He went to the water recycling center and learned about purification tablets. He stopped by the maintenance department and borrowed basic tools. His roommates watched these activities with growing confusion. "Why do you need emergency food?" Vex asked one evening. His light patterns showed curiosity mixed with worry. "Are you planning to fight for many days?" Grox wondered. "Bruthan combat rarely lasts more than a few minutes." Kip's tentacle arms moved nervously. "I have been researching human combat sports. I do not understand why you need water purification equipment." Do-hyun smiled. "I am still planning my demonstration. Do not worry about it." But his roommates did worry. They whispered to each other when they thought Do-hyun was not listening. They seemed to think he was preparing for some kind of extreme fighting that would last for days. One day, Do-hyun met the only other human on the station. Haewon Park was a graduate student who studied alien biology. She worked in the research laboratories and rarely had time to talk. But when she heard about Do-hyun's upcoming demonstration, she made time to meet him. They sat in a quiet cafe that served food from dozens of different worlds. Haewon ate something that looked like blue soup with floating crystals. Do-hyun had found something that tasted almost like chicken. "The other species have strange ideas about humans," Haewon said. "They think we are either primitive warriors or weak scholars, nothing in between." "What do you think I should show them?" Do-hyun asked. Haewon smiled. "Show them what humans are really good at, not fighting other humans, not building the biggest machines or moving the fastest. Show them what makes us special." What makes us special? Think about it. Every other species in this school comes from a world that is safe and comfortable. The Veltharians evolved on crystal planets with perfect weather. The Bruthans come from worlds with strong gravity but no predators. The Zephyrians developed on gas giant moons with stable environments. Do-hyun nodded. And humans? Humans come from a world that tried to kill them every single day. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, hurricanes, droughts, floods, diseases, predators, poisonous plants and animals. Your ancestors survived all of that. So humans are the best survivors in the galaxy. Other species might be stronger or faster or smarter, but when everything goes wrong, humans keep going. That is your real strength. After talking with Haewon, Do-hyun knew exactly what he wanted to demonstrate. He visited the environmental simulation chambers. These rooms could create any environment found on known worlds. Students used them to study alien planets and practice for dangerous missions. Do-hyun spent hours studying the most challenging environments in the database: desert worlds with no water, ice planets with deadly storms, jungle worlds full of poisonous creatures, worlds with poisonous air or crushing gravity. He finally chose a combination that would challenge everyone: an Arctic environment mixed with resource scarcity. It would be cold, dangerous, and require careful thinking to survive. The simulation chamber manager was a friendly Zephyrian named Kef. He looked worried when Do-hyun explained what he wanted. "This environment is very dangerous," Kef said. "We usually only use it for advanced military training. Can you make it safe enough for students but still challenging?" Kef's tentacle arms moved in patterns that meant deep thinking. "Yes, but why do you want such a harsh environment for a sports demonstration?" Do-hyun smiled. "You will see." Meanwhile, other students continued preparing their demonstrations. The Veltharians created light shows that could be seen from across the station. The Bruthans built an arena for their strength competitions. The Zephyrians designed racing courses that defied gravity. Every species was planning something beautiful, exciting, or impressive. They expected the human to do the same, but with violence. Professor Thane visited Do-hyun one day after regular gym class. The silver-skinned instructor moved with his usual grace, but his expression showed concern. "I have heard interesting rumors about your preparation," Professor Thane said. "Students say you are gathering survival equipment instead of combat gear." "That is correct, Professor. I hope you understand what is expected. This demonstration should show other species what human physical culture is like. Many beings across the galaxy fear humans because of your reputation as warriors. Do-hyun nodded. I understand, Professor. But I think there might be some misunderstanding about what human physical culture really involves. Professor Thane's silver eyes narrowed. Meaning? You will see during my demonstration. Professor Thane left looking unsatisfied. Do-hyun knew the instructor expected a display of human fighting ability. Instead, he was going to get something completely different. That evening, Do-hyun's roommates confronted him directly. We are worried about you, Vex said. His light patterns pulsed with anxiety. You are not preparing like a warrior, Grox added. Where are your weapons? Your armor? Kip's voice was high with stress. I have calculated the probability of injury in human combat sports. The numbers are frightening. Do-hyun looked at his three roommates. They had become real friends over the past weeks. They were genuinely concerned for his safety. I promise. You, he said. My demonstration will not be dangerous in the way you think, but it will teach everyone something important about humans. What will it teach? Vex asked. Do-hyun smiled. That the most important human skill is not fighting other people. It is fighting against a universe that does not care if we live or die. His roommates looked confused, but they stopped asking questions. They trusted him, even if they did not understand. The demonstration was only 1 week away. Around the station, excitement was building. Students from every species talked about what the human would show them. Some bet on gladiatorial combat. Others predicted team fighting sports. A few expected individual martial arts. None of them guessed what Do-hyun was really planning. He had decided to show them the most important thing about humanity. Not how they fought each other, but how they survived everything else. Demonstration Day arrived with great excitement throughout the Galactic Educational Institute. Students from every species filled the enormous gymnasium. The air buzzed with dozens of different languages and communication methods, light patterns, sound waves, chemical signals, and telepathic whispers mixed together in a festival of alien interaction. The Veltharians went first. 12 crystal beings moved to the center of the gymnasium floor. Their bodies began to glow with soft light that grew brighter and more complex. The light patterns flowed from one Veltharian to another, like liquid music made visible. The demonstration was breathtaking. The Veltharians created stories with light, showing the history of their people through dancing colors. They built crystal cities in the air using only illumination. They made flowers bloom and stars explode in patterns too. Beautiful for words. When they finished, the entire gymnasium was silent for several seconds. Then every species began applauding, cheering, or showing appreciation in their own way. The Veltharians had created pure art with their bodies. Next came the Bruthans. Grox and 5 other massive beings carried stone blocks into the gymnasium. Each block was the size of a small building. The Bruthans began their strength competition by throwing these blocks across the gym like they were small balls. The display of power was incredible. The Bruthans lifted weights that could crush starships. They bent metal bars into complex sculptures. They moved with surprising grace for being so large, turning raw strength into beautiful demonstrations of physical ability. The audience cheered even louder. Some smaller species moved back instinctively when the Bruthans threw their heaviest, stones. The Zephyrians came third. Kip and 12 other purple beings activated a complex aerial course that filled the upper half of the gymnasium. The course was a 3-dimensional maze of floating platforms, spinning obstacles, and energy barriers. The Zephyrians moved through this course like purple lightning. They flew, twisted, and spun through impossible spaces at speeds that made them almost invisible. They worked as a team, passing energy spheres between them while navigating the deadly course. Not one of them touched an obstacle or made a mistake. The crowd went wild. The Zephyrians had shown that intelligence and speed could create their own kind of beauty. Other species gave their demonstrations. Each one was impressive in its own way. The tree-like Sylvans showed how they could grow living sculptures in minutes. The aquatic Delphinids created water sculptures that defied gravity. The energy beings called Luminous danced through solid matter like it was not there. Every demonstration was amazing. Everyone showed the best qualities of its species. The audience expected the human demonstration to be equally spectacular, but with violence and combat. Finally, Professor Thane called Do-hyun to the center of the gymnasium. Do-hyun walked slowly to the middle of the floor. He wore simple, practical clothes, thick pants, a warm jacket, and sturdy boots. He carried a basic backpack that looked almost empty. No weapons, no armor, no team of other humans. The gymnasium grew quiet. Hundreds of alien beings stared at the small human figure standing alone in the center of the vast space. "Thank you all for coming," Do-hyun said. His voice carried clearly through the gym's sound system. "I know you are expecting to see human combat sports today." Excited whispers moved through the crowd. Some aliens moved to the edge of their seats. "But I want to show you something different," Do-hyun continued. "Human physical culture is not really about fighting each other. It is about something else entirely." Professor Thane's silver eyebrows rose with surprise. This was not what he had expected. "If you would all follow me," Do-hyun said, "we are going to Environmental Simulation Chamber 12. The crowd hesitated. This was not normal. Demonstrations always happened in the gymnasium. Why was the human taking them somewhere else? Professor Thane looked uncertain but nodded for everyone to follow. The massive crowd of students moved through the corridors like a colorful parade. Many aliens whispered questions to each other. What could the human be planning? Environmental Simulation Chamber 12 was much smaller than the gymnasium. Only about half the students could fit inside. The rest watched through large viewing windows that surrounded the chamber. Do-hyun stood in the center of the empty chamber. The walls, floor, and ceiling were plain gray metal. Nothing special or interesting could be seen anywhere. "Human physical education," Do-hyun announced, "is not about competing against each other." He activated the chamber's control panel. The gray walls flickered and changed. Suddenly, the chamber looked like a frozen wasteland. Snow fell from the ceiling. Wind howled through speakers. The temperature began to drop rapidly. It is about competing against the universe itself. The chamber continued to change. The floor became covered with ice and snow. Fake trees appeared, bent and broken by constant wind. The light grew dim and gray, like a winter storm was coming. Do-hyun pulled items from his backpack. Basic tools. Emergency food, water purification tablets, rope, and a small metal container. Very simple equipment. Nothing that looked impressive or advanced. "The goal," he said as the temperature dropped below freezing, "is not to win against someone else." Some of the alien students began to shiver. The Veltharians' light patterns flickered with distress. The Zephyrians huddled together for warmth. The goal is to survive. Together. The chamber's environment grew harsher. The wind picked up, blowing snow everywhere. The temperature dropped even more. Scattered around the chamber, basic supplies appeared. Broken pieces of metal, some fabric, a few containers, and what looked like emergency rations. Many of the alien students began to panic. This was not a game or sport. This was a real survival situation. The chamber's safety systems would protect them from actual death, but the cold, wind, and harsh conditions were completely real. Do-hyun remained calm. He moved around the chamber, examining the scattered supplies. He seemed completely comfortable in the freezing environment. "On Earth," he called out over the wind, "we call this Tuesday." Some of the stronger aliens tried to use their natural abilities to deal with the environment. Grox attempted to smash through the wall, but the chamber was built to contain much more powerful forces. The Zephyrians tried to fly above the storm, but the wind was too strong even for them. The Veltharians were in the worst trouble. Their crystal bodies were not designed for extreme cold. Their light patterns flickered weakly as they began to shut down their non-essential functions. Du-Hyun noticed their distress immediately. He gathered some of the broken metal pieces and used his tools to create a simple, reflective shelter around the Veltharians. "Vex," he called to his roommate. "Can you make your lights brighter? The reflection will help warm this area." Vex's patterns brightened with effort. The metal shelter began to reflect and concentrate his light, creating a warmer space for the crystal beings. "See?" Do-Hyun said to the watching crowd. "Every species has abilities that can help in survival situations. You just have to think differently about how to use them." Professor Thane watched from outside the chamber. His silver face showed confusion and growing interest. This was not what he had expected from a human combat demonstration, but he was beginning to understand that it might be something more important. Do-Hyun continued working calmly in the harsh environment. He showed no signs of stress or panic, even as the conditions grew worse. The chamber added new challenges, equipment failures, dwindling supplies, and increasing wind speed. But instead of fighting against these problems, Do-Hyun seemed to treat them as puzzles to solve. He worked systematically, addressing each crisis as it appeared. The alien students began to realize that they were watching something remarkable. The human was not just surviving the impossible environment, he was teaching them how to survive it too. Do-Hyun moved through the frozen simulation chamber like he had been born in such conditions. While the alien students struggled with the cold and wind, he began teaching them basic survival skills with calm patience. First rule of survival. He called out over the howling wind, "Stay calm! Panic kills faster than cold or hunger." He walked over to where Grox was trying to punch through the chamber walls. The massive Bruthan's 4 arms moved like hammers, but the reinforced walls barely showed scratches. "Grox, stop," Do-Hyun said gently. "Your strength is amazing, but we need to use it smarter." The big alien stopped punching and looked down at his small human roommate. "See those broken support beams over there?" Do-Hyun pointed to some twisted metal scattered around the chamber. "You could bend those into shelter frames. We need protection from the wind more than we need to break out." Grox nodded slowly. He walked to the metal debris and began bending it into useful shapes. His enormous strength turned twisted scrap into straight support poles and connecting joints. Meanwhile, Kip and the other Zephyrians were flying in panicked circles near the ceiling. The storm winds kept pushing them off course, and they were using up energy quickly. "Kip," Do-Hyun called, "come down here! I need your brain, not your flying!" The small purple alien dropped to the ground, his tentacle arms shaking with cold and fear. "Look at these supplies," Do-Hyun said, pointing to the scattered equipment around the chamber. "Can you figure out the best way to use them? We need to know what we have and what we need most." Kip's large yellow eyes focused on the supplies. His scientific mind began working despite his fear. "There are 17 food rations, but only 3 water containers. We have fabric pieces, but no insulation materials. We have tools, but no fuel for fire." "Perfect," Do-Hyun said. "Now we know our priorities. Water first, then warmth, then food." He showed Chip how to organize their resources. The Zephyrians' analytical abilities were perfect for tracking their supplies and planning how to use them efficiently. The Veltharians were still huddled in their metal shelter, but their light patterns were growing weaker. The extreme cold was affecting their crystal biology in dangerous ways. Do-Hyun knelt beside Vex. "How are you feeling?" "Cold," Vex replied, his musical voice weak. "Veltharians are not made for such environments." "I know," Do-Hyun said, "but your light generation is exactly what we need right now. Can you work with me?" Do-hyun gathered some of the scattered fabric and wrapped it around pieces of metal Grox had shaped. Then he positioned these bundles around the Veltharians like a focusing system. Try pulsing your light in steady rhythms, he suggested to Vex. The fabric and metal will trap and reflect the heat. Vex tried the technique. His light patterns became more regular, and the improvised reflectors began to warm the area around them. The other Veltharians copied his example, and soon they had created a warm zone in the middle of the freezing chamber. Other alien students watched these activities with amazement. The human was not just surviving the harsh conditions, he was helping everyone else survive too. More importantly, he was showing them how to use their own natural abilities in completely new ways. Professor Thane observed from outside the chamber, his silver face thoughtful. He had expected the human to demonstrate individual combat skills. Instead, Do-hyun was showing advanced group survival techniques that turned everyone's weaknesses into strengths. The chamber's environment grew even more challenging. The storm intensified, and some of their equipment began to fail. A water container cracked and started leaking. One of the support poles Grox had made bent under the wind pressure. Several alien students began to panic again. Some tried to call for the simulation to end. Others demanded to be let out of the chamber. Do-hyun remained completely calm. He addressed each problem methodically, like he was following a checklist only he could see. For the cracked water container, he showed them how to use fabric strips and metal pieces to create a patch. For the failing shelter, he reorganized their supplies to build a stronger structure using engineering principles that worked with the wind instead of fighting against it. On Earth, he explained while working, humans face situations like this all the time. Earthquakes destroy our homes. Floods wash away our cities. Storms cut off our power and food supplies. Ice ages freeze entire continents for thousands of years. He paused to help a group of tree-like sylvans who were struggling with the cold. Their bark-like skin was not designed for freezing temperatures. We learned that survival is not about being stronger than the disaster, he continued. It is about being more stubborn than the disaster. Do-hyun demonstrated fire-making using some metal pieces and friction techniques. The aliens watched in fascination as he created flames from nothing but basic materials and human knowledge. He showed them how to collect and purify water using condensation and basic filtration. He taught them to recognize which of their scattered supplies were most important and which could be sacrificed if necessary. Most importantly, he showed them how to make decisions quickly when information was incomplete and time was running short. Survival is about making the best choice you can with what you know right now, he explained. You cannot wait for perfect information. The universe will not give you time to think forever. As the simulation continued, something remarkable happened. The alien students stopped panicking and started thinking. They began to work together more effectively. They started seeing problems as puzzles to solve instead of disasters to fear. Grox used his strength to create better shelters and tools. Kip organized their resources and calculated the most efficient ways to use them. Vex and the other Veltharians provided light and warmth while also creating beautiful patterns that kept everyone's spirits up. Even species that had never worked together before began cooperating. The flying Zephyrians scouted for additional supplies. The tree-like sylvans used their natural patience to handle tasks that required careful attention. The aquatic delphinids helped purify water using their understanding of liquid chemistry. Professor Thane watched this transformation with growing amazement. In just a few hours, Do-hyun had turned a group of panicking individuals into an organized survival team. Each species was contributing their natural strengths while covering for each other's weaknesses. But what impressed Professor Thane most was Do-hyun himself. The human showed no signs of stress, fear, or uncertainty. As the conditions became more difficult, Do-hyun seemed to become more focused and capable. Outside the chamber, Haewon Park stood beside Professor Thane. The graduate student had come to watch her fellow human's demonstration. "Impressive," Professor Thane said to her, "but I do not understand. How is Do-hyun so calm? Even trained soldiers from warrior species would be struggling in these conditions." Haewon smiled. "You have to understand what Earth is like, Professor. Humans evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill them. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, hurricanes, droughts, floods, diseases, predators, poisonous plants, and animals." Professor Thane nodded. "Yes, I have read about Earth's extreme conditions." "Then you should understand," Haewon said. "What you are seeing is not training, it is instinct. For Do-hyun, this simulation is not unusually difficult. It is just another Tuesday on Earth." The simulation entered its most dangerous phase. The chamber's computer systems began creating equipment failures, severe weather changes, and critically low supplies. These were the conditions that would test even professional survival experts. Most of the alien students were exhausted and struggling. They had been in the harsh environment for 3 hours, and their bodies were not designed for such extended stress. Many species were built for comfort and efficiency, not endurance. But something strange was happening with Do-hyun. While everyone else grew weaker and more tired, he seemed to become stronger and more alert. His movements were quicker and more precise. His decision-making became faster and more accurate. The watching crowd outside the chamber began to notice this change. Professor Thane leaned forward, studying the human student with new interest. "Look at his vitals," Haewon said, pointing to the monitor that tracked all students in the chamber. "Everyone else's stress levels are rising. Their heart rates are elevated. Their brain activity is scattered." Professor Thane looked at Do-hyun's readings. "But his are becoming more stable." "Exactly. Humans have something we call crisis focus. When everything goes wrong, we do not break down. We become better." Inside the chamber, Do-hyun was proving this point. A new crisis had developed. Their main water supply had become contaminated, and the storm was growing so severe that their shelter was failing. While the alien students looked around in panic, Do-hyun was already moving. He had noticed the problem 30 seconds before anyone else and was already implementing solutions. "Kip, we need to move our water purification setup to the east corner," he called out. "The wind patterns are different there. Grox, can you strengthen the shelter support on the north side? The stress readings show it will fail in about 10 minutes if we do not act now. Vex, we need focused light for the new work area. Can you coordinate with the other Veltharians?" Each instruction was precise and immediate. Do-hyun was not just reacting to problems as they appeared. He was predicting problems before they became critical and solving them proactively. The alien students followed his directions without question. They had learned to trust his judgment completely. When Do-hyun said something needed to be done, it needed to be done. Professor Thane noticed something else. He is making increasingly complex decisions with very little information. How is this possible? Haewon nodded. Human evolution. Our ancestors lived on a world where you had to make life or death decisions quickly and with incomplete data. Make the wrong choice about which path to take and a predator kills you. Make the wrong choice about weather patterns and you freeze to death. Make the wrong choice about food and you starve. So humans evolved to be good at making decisions under pressure? More than that. Humans evolved to be good at making decisions under pressure while remaining calm and rational. Panic gets you killed on Earth, so we developed brains that work better during crisis, not worse. This was becoming obvious inside the chamber. As the simulation created more problems, Do-hyun's responses became faster and more effective. He was not just surviving the crisis, he was thriving in it. The chamber computer added a new challenge. A simulated injury. One of the Sylvan students was marked as having a damaged limb and could not move normally. Do-hyun assessed the situation in seconds. He reorganized the entire group's activities to account for the injured student. he assigned 2 other students to help with movement while redistributing the injured student's tasks among the group. But he did this without making the injured student feel useless. Instead, he gave the Sylvan important planning and coordination tasks that could be done without moving around. Recovery from injury is part of survival, Do-hyun explained to the group. Everyone contributes what they can. No one gets left behind. The alien students were learning lessons they had never expected. This was not just about staying alive in harsh conditions. This was about maintaining group unity and individual dignity even when everything was falling apart. Outside the chamber, more professors and staff had gathered to watch. Word was spreading throughout the station about the humans' unusual demonstration. Dr. Zienth, the head of psychology, spoke to Professor Thane. "I have never seen anything like this. The human student is exhibiting stress response patterns that should not be possible." "What do you mean?" Professor Thane asked. "Look at his brain activity. During extreme stress, most species show decreased cognitive function, fight or flight responses, reduced problem-solving ability. This is normal and healthy." Dr. Zienth pointed to Do-hyun's monitor. "But the human shows the opposite pattern. As stress increases, his cognitive function improves. His problem-solving becomes more efficient. His multitasking ability increases." HFY nodded. "Humans call this functioning under pressure. We are not sure why we evolved this way, but we think it is because Earth never gave our ancestors a choice. You either learned to think clearly during disasters, or you died." Inside the chamber, the final crisis was beginning. The computer had reduced their supplies to almost nothing. The storm was at maximum intensity. Multiple systems were failing at once. This was the point where even trained professionals might break down. The complexity of problems was overwhelming. Any normal being would be expected to make mistakes or panic. But Do-hyun seemed to enter an almost supernatural state of calm focus. He moved through the chamber like he was following a detailed plan that only he could see. Every action was efficient and purposeful. He coordinated 7 different repair tasks simultaneously. He managed resource allocation for 12 different needs at once. He kept track of the health and status of 36 alien students while solving engineering problems that would challenge a team of experts. And he did it all while remaining encouraging and supportive to everyone around him. "The most important survival skill," he said while working, "is not giving up. The universe is big and hostile and does not care about you. But humans learned something important. The universe cannot break you if you refuse to break." The alien. Students watched in awe as Do-hyun turned what should have been a complete disaster into a manageable situation. He was not just surviving impossible conditions. He was making it look easy. Professor Thane finally understood what he was seeing. "This is not a demonstration of human sports or combat." "No," HFY agreed. "This is a demonstration of why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Dangerous? Not because we are violent, because we do not know how to quit. Every other species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that were predictable and safe. When things go wrong, they panic or shut down. That is normal and healthy behavior for them. HFY gestured toward the chamber where Do-hyun was calmly solving his 7th crisis in the past hour. But humans evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill them. So we developed something that no other species has, the ability to remain functional when everything is falling apart. We do not just survive disasters. We adapt to them. We learn from them. We become stronger because of them. Professor Thane stared at the small human figure in the chamber. Do-hyun was teaching alien students how to work together, stay calm under pressure, and solve problems with limited resources. He was turning a survival crisis into a cooperation exercise. This is not physical education, Professor Thane realized. This is something far more important. The simulation finally ended after 4 hours of intense survival challenges. Do-hyun pressed the shutdown button, and the harsh environment faded away. The snow stopped falling, the wind died down, and the temperature returned to normal. Chamber fell silent. 36 alien students stood in the middle of the space, looking around in amazement. They were exhausted, but they were alive. More importantly, they had all survived together. None of them had been hurt. None of them had been left behind. They had faced impossible challenges and overcome them as a team. Do-hyun looked around at his fellow students. How does everyone feel? The responses came in dozens of different languages and communication methods. Light patterns of gratitude from the Veltharians, deep rumbles of respect from the Bruthans, high-pitched excitement from the Zephyrians. But the emotion was the same from every species. Amazement. They had discovered abilities they never knew they possessed. They had learned to work together in ways they never thought possible. They had faced their fears and overcome them. More importantly, they had learned what real strength looked like. The chamber doors opened, and the watching crowd poured in. Students who had observed from outside rushed to congratulate those who had participated. Professors and staff members looked at Do-hyun with new respect and curiosity. Professor Thane was the first to reach Do-hyun. The silver-skinned instructor's expression had changed completely from the beginning of the demonstration. "That was remarkable," Professor Thane said. "I expected a display of human combat sports. Instead, you gave us something far more valuable." "What was that, Professor?" "You showed us what true physical education should be, not competition against each other, but preparation for the challenges that life will inevitably bring." Professor Thane looked around at the alien students who were sharing their experiences with excited voices and gestures. Every species here learned something important today. They learned that they are stronger than they believed. They learned that cooperation is more powerful than individual ability. They learned that they can face the unknown and survive. Do-hyun smiled. "That is what humans learn when we go camping as children. The universe is big and dangerous, but we do not have to face it alone." Dr. Zienth, the psychology professor, approached with several other faculty members. "I would like to study your stress response patterns," she said to Do-hyun. "What you demonstrated today should not be possible according to our understanding of crisis psychology." "What do you mean?" "You showed improved cognitive function under extreme stress, enhanced problem-solving ability during crisis, increased emotional stability when facing multiple simultaneous challenges. These traits could revolutionize how we prepare students for dangerous missions." Haewon Park joined the group. She looked proud of her fellow human. "I think what you really discovered," she said to the professors, "is why humans have been successful explorers and colonists, despite being relatively weak and slow." "Please explain," Professor Thane requested. "Every other species in the galaxy expands carefully. They survey new worlds thoroughly. They prepare extensively. They only settle planets that are safe and predictable." Haewon gestured toward Do-hyun. "Humans settle planets that are actively trying to kill them. We do not wait for perfect conditions. We adapt to whatever we find." "Because we evolved to be good at adapting," Do-hyun added. "Earth taught us that no environment stays the same forever. So we learned to be comfortable with change and uncertainty." Over the following days, word of Do-hyun's demonstration spread throughout the Galactic Educational Institute. Students who had not been present requested to see recordings of the survival simulation. Many asked if they could participate in similar exercises. Do-hyun found himself surrounded by alien students who wanted to learn human survival techniques. They were particularly interested in the psychological aspects, how to stay calm during crisis, how to make decisions with incomplete information, how to maintain group unity under stress. His roommates were the most enthusiastic students. Vex created beautiful light patterns that spelled out "thank you" in Korean characters. "I never understood that cooperation could be more beautiful than competition," he said. Grox had crafted a simple but functional survival tool as a gift. "Strength is not about breaking things," he said. "It is about building things that do not break." Kip had spent days calculating resource optimization strategies. "I want to take these techniques back to my homeworld," he said. "Our emergency protocols are too rigid. We need to learn human adaptability." Professor Thane made an announcement that surprised everyone. The Galactic Educational Institute was creating a new curriculum called Human Adaptive Survival Training. They wanted to teach these skills to students from every species. "We have realized," Professor Thane explained, "that the galaxy is full of dangers we cannot predict. Space pirate attacks, equipment failures on distant worlds, natural disasters on colony planets, environmental changes that happen faster than we can adapt. Traditional education teaches students to excel in controlled environments, but the real universe is not controlled. It is chaotic and dangerous and unpredictable. Human survival training teaches students to excel despite chaos. This may be the most important education we can provide." The Institute requested more human instructors. They wanted to establish survival training programs at educational facilities throughout the galaxy. Do-hyun found this both exciting and amusing. He had come to the Institute to learn about alien cultures. Instead, he had ended up teaching aliens about human culture. But the most important change was in how other species viewed humans. Before Do-hyun's demonstration, most aliens saw humans as either primitive warriors or weak scholars. Now they understood that humans possessed something more valuable than physical strength or advanced technology. Humans had psychological strength. They had the ability to endure, adapt, and overcome challenges that would break other species. 2 weeks after the demonstration, Do-hyun received a message from Earth. His family wanted to know how his studies were going. He sat in his room, looking out at the stars, and composed his reply. "Dear Mom and Dad," he wrote, "remember when you made me go on all those camping trips? Remember when you said survival skills would be important someday? Remember when I complained that none of my friends had to sleep in tents and eat trail food? Well, it turns out you were right. The galaxy is impressed by our camping skills. The Galactic Educational Institute wants to hire human instructors to teach survival training. They want to learn how humans stay calm during disasters and work together when everything goes wrong. I guess what I am saying is, thank you for teaching me that the universe is dangerous, but that does not mean we have to be afraid of it. Your son, Do-hyun." He sent the message and leaned back in his chair. Outside his window, ships from dozens of different worlds moved around the space station. Each one carried beings who were now a little bit more prepared for whatever challenges the universe might throw at them. Hae-won Park visited him that evening. She had news from the research departments. "They want to study human stress psychology," she told him. "Several universities are requesting human volunteers for research programs. They want to understand how we developed these survival traits." "What did you tell them?" "I told them that if they really want to understand humans, they should visit Earth, see where we come from, experience the world that made us what we are." Do-hyun smiled. "That could be interesting. Alien tourists on Earth." "They would learn quickly," Hae-won said. "One camping trip in the Rocky Mountains, and they would understand everything about human psychology." Do-hyun looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there was Earth, the dangerous world that had shaped humanity into the galaxy's most persistent survivors. And now, thanks to one simple demonstration, the rest of the galaxy was beginning to understand what made humans special. It was not their ability to fight each other. It was their ability to fight against impossible odds and keep going when any rational being would give up. The universe was vast and hostile and uncaring. But humans had learned something important during their long evolution on a death world. The universe could not break you if you refused to break. That lesson, Do-hyun realized, might be humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy.